Thanks to everyone for hopping on. I know this is a short 1 hour meeting and we have about 4 items, I think, on our agenda today. And wanted to let everyone know that Robert is unable to be here today, and he wishes that he could be here, but he's unable to be here today. So I'm going to chair this meeting in his absence. With that being said, first of all, the welcome, and then we're going to get right into our business. The first item is the agenda. So it is the action for the minutes from last month. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
A second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of any discussion to that motion? Okay, we can get right along, so it is approved. Let's go ahead and vote. Ayes, raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Any nays? Looks like that motion has been approved. Thank you. Moving on to the second part of our meeting, which is a big piece today, is the funding request. There's been changes with the funding requests, and we're going to be discussing that today. And then there was also a late edition that I sent last night. I hope that Lisa and Spencer and Laura, that you received that edition for Scribble, the request from K-12. So we're going to go ahead. I think, Lisa, are you leading out on this?
And Patty, just so you know, this is Laura. The document has been added to Board Docs, so you should all see 2 documents in your Board Docs.
Okay, thank you, Laura. I know that was last minute. I apologize for that.
I did email it out too.
She's on the call.
So we're going to go ahead and look at those funding requests. Did we have a staff member that was going to lead through this?
I can do it, Patty. Lisa had to step away, it looks
Okay.
like. But
Thank you.
if you want, I'll kind of give a running summary and then from there we can let the discussion go. Does that work okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
So there's 3 main areas that we've identified. The first one hopefully isn't too much of a surprise, but staff retention and equity is what we're calling it. For an organization like UETN, where it kind of has a confluence of tech talent alongside education and even healthcare, we feel like this challenge is especially compounded for us, where all of those industries are facing real acute challenges in hiring, recruiting, and retaining key staff. And so, a lot like many other organizations, we feel like whatever COLA or other comp increase the legislature approves for state for public employees, we would want some additional funding to assist us in that retention and recruitment opportunity. So that's that first one. The second, we've put in operations, and there's 2 main pieces to that. The first is it's interactive video conferencing management suite. Currently, the software that UETN staff uses is 15 years old. It's end of life. There's no support for it. It's a very bare bones version of what's currently available on the market. Generally, what's on the market is a subscription-based type of license. There was an RFP last year that brought us, I think, a sense of what the pricing would be. Jeff's on here for questions if we need to get into some real technical detail, but they're preparing an RFP to go out, and really what this will do is add a lot of automated function that currently doesn't exist over IVC, primarily for end users and for the utilization components, or the reporting and some of the deeper data analysis we could get around utilization for IVC. I know there's some questions about the price tag. We're going from roughly a $30,000 cost to a little over $500,000, but that's largely because of the end users, because it's a subscription license for users. That's where the cost will skyrocket. Where the current license, it really sits, I would say, generally in-house, where our staff is accessing that scheduling software, and really people on the end user side don't even really see it. So that's the big differentiator. that software. Any questions on that particular piece? I know there was a little bit of question as we shared this with the Dr. Norman and Dr. Wagner.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in. We just had a few questions that were about the use of the tools that are already embedded within some of the platforms being used, but it sounds like activity. Is that correct?
Yeah, you broke up just a little bit there, Patty, but I believe you're asking about the tools being used, and basically it's a tool that goes out to the end user much more visibly than what we have currently. Okay. Any other questions? I guess Jeff or
What's the future of IVC? Is that going to continue to be something you'll use?
So
sorry.
when we talk about IVC, Steve, this includes the other platforms like WebEx and Zoom. And this is, as I understand it, essentially, this integrates all of the platforms. So regardless of what the streaming platform is, I think it's safe to say online delivery is there for the future foreseeably, but IVC, whether it's the traditional broadcast method or the IVC infrastructure that's sort of the existing infrastructure, or Zoom or WebEx, or if new tools come along. Jeff, David, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
I can chime in a little bit here, and Dave, feel free as well. The one thing that we're seeing right now, Steve, is we've had the introduction of Zoom and WebEx, primarily Zoom at a large scale. We're also seeing an influx of the use of Microsoft Teams, but one constant we're seeing, especially as everybody's rolling back into their universities and into the classrooms, is the distance ed community continues to leverage their classroom systems. And so having a means that scales so that the level of classes, say that a Utah State is running throughout the day, the ones that we're supporting with other counterparts, whether it be Alpine District, UVU, or Snow, you still need a component that can manage, reserve, and then bring up and tear down those systems, and then integrate with Zoom, WebEx, Teams, other solutions that are being brought to bear in a hybrid environment. So right now, we're not seeing really much of a slowdown or movement away from the traditional room systems. They're still being used in the way that they have been in the past, but now they want to be able to connect them to these other solutions. So that's adding some complexity to this solution, as well as TMS is end of life. So we don't have any more road we can go down with TMS, but we need a way to manage at scale in a way that ensures a consistent experience for everybody, and a level of automation that helps make this go. So similar to what TMS had done. Dave, did you have any other input you wanted to provide there?
No, that's really good input. I think it's important to understand that a large part of the escalation in cost is moving, like most companies do, especially software companies today, to a subscription-based model as opposed to a one-time licensing fee. With TMS, we were always at an advantage. You might buy 100 licenses for this particular year, and then you weren't charged again for that. But now with subscription-based, you have to look at it per user accessing the system per month. And so that drives up costs quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that particular request? Okay. The second part of that request is for funding to pay for what we currently bill to county health departments and community health clinics on the telehealth side. Really, this is kind of more of a policy question that we'd love the board to weigh in on, about, on the education side, LEAs and others that are public, they're, of course, there's state funding to offset that cost. On the telehealth side, that funding doesn't exist. And so currently we're billing them. And so this amount would cover I think it's 24 clinics and county health departments. And again, these are community clinics, so these are federally defined. So they're different than a traditional just private clinic. There are a few of those in the telehealth network, but these are by definition either community health clinics or county health departments. So that's what that funding request is. Any questions on that particular item?
I would just say that that's essential. These federally qualified health centers are dependent upon this kind of support because there really is not an ability for them to have providers actually in that community providing care. So the telehealth connection is vital. So I support the request for funding.
Thanks, Ted. So those two together, the IVC suite and the telehealth funding, that's our operations section that totals 750,000 ongoing. Oh, Brittany, sorry.
No worries. I just have a question, and it's recognizing that I have very little understanding or experience of the telehealth side of things. But I'm just curious about this request as it shifts from local funding into a project to state funding a project, and just curious about kind of the thoughts behind that type of a shift where we see the need to balance state and local funding in programmatic situations, because anyways, just for budgeting purposes, I'm curious about what you see as that balance in this particular piece.
No, I think that's I think the policy question, Brittany. These are locations that will likely be using either county funds, like a county health department, or a community health department who's likely using federal funds to pay for this. And so that's where our feeling is, as a proposal, to put this forward to say, you know what, maybe the state should support these entities who are otherwise using other public funds to basically pay back another public entity for billing their telehealth connections. Similar to what you could argue on the education side, right? Is that LEAs would be on the hook to use their locally, either through state funds or local funds, to pay for their network connection, and the state has stepped in and there's state funding to offset that. So it is a policy question on whether or not on the telehealth side that same model should exist or not. So would love your opinions on that, but it's certainly, I think, a valid policy question. Okay, well, unless there's any more discussion or questions, or maybe we can have more broader discussion as we go through all these items. The final item is a cybersecurity request that's come from the CIOs on the USHE side. This is because of our support to USHE, and this has been an issue for the CIOs for quite some time in seeking funding for their cybersecurity gaps that they've identified. There's also a policy that Steve has been shepherding with the CIOs to standardize a lot of those cybersecurity strategies and protections. This funding is one time, and presumably it would be an ask to pull from federal funds in the event there are some available. But it is going through the traditional process as we've been directed by GOPB to put this part of the broader request of UETN. So there are those items, and then there was one item, Patty, if you want to take that one on the Scribble software.
Sorry, I got my phone too, just in case, so my voice will sound better. So help me navigate if I stop talking in a weird way or anything. Yes, so Scribble is a K-12 ask, and I have Rick Gaisford on here who's going to speak to this request, and then maybe some other additional information from Superintendent Long as well. So Rick.
Thank you. 2 years ago, we became, just after, as COVID was well, still around, but we were looking at tools in that. We became aware of a tool called Scribble, which is really a research platform. It's a tool that allows students to research and then to help them with their writing, to help teachers to organize things, help students to organize things. And it allows students to be able to go out and to use all the tools, particularly all the tools that UEN has, to be able to save web pages for later use, to be able to bookmark websites, to annotate documents that they find, to be able to tag documents, to create their own personal library of resources, to be able to store files in the cloud so they'll be accessible to them at all times. And this is what Scribble does, is it helps students to organize, to be able to research, and then to help their writing. The State Board of Education, using ESSER funds, was able to pay for the first 2 years of the contract, and then for the program and then it was our intent to bring it to UEN to be able to add this to the suite of resources that they have been offering to schools and to students, and that, and I think it sort of fits very nicely into into the LMS that we have with Canvas, with the Nearpod contract that we have for Meridian Engagement Platform. And now this would be a request to bring to the students and teachers in K-12 a research platform to really help students to be able to become better writers, better researchers, better users of information, more literate in so many different skills. What we've seen in the last 2 years is really significant growth. We now have, when we started, that first column really should be 2021, not 2022. In the last year, we've more than doubled the number of students that have been regularly accessing Scribble. The number of teachers has also nearly doubled. And just some of the other information, currently there have been over 200,000 information sources that have been saved by students and teachers. It's being used by educators in at least 80 of the LEAs. So it's got significant growth, and as teachers and librarians and that see the program, they're really taken with it. This is they get really excited about what the possibilities are for students and that. So it seemed to be we would like to be able to keep this going, whether that's being able to extend the contract. I know Laura Hunter sent me a note just barely prior to this meeting today, that we don't typically ask for a software program, but I think if the request may end up having to be for a research platform. And I think that there would be significant support for that. I know when the State Board of Education a year ago was presented this, they unanimously, if I remember right, unanimously supported the use of funds for this platform. In fact, several of the board members said, "Well, where was this tool when I was doing some research, and that I could have used this?" And I think that's it has great impact for teachers as well. So that's just a little bit of the background on the program, but I think it would be a natural fit to some of the things that we are doing and that UEN is providing.
Thank you, Rick.
Superintendent Long.
I know. Sorry about that.
You can have one or the other, not both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Superintendent.
I love this application, this tool. I think it's a fantastic resource to have out there. Right now, I'm calling it the Smart Kids tool, because the people that have discovered it and understand what it can do for them, it makes your life so much easier. And I love the numbers that you're sharing, Rick, that we're increasing at those rates. I just wish we really saw the general use. So I don't know if there's a way to do this by user. I don't know how you do that, because I want every kid in my district to have access to this, but I probably see just a handful that are actually making use of the tool that's available. I wish more of them were sharing. I think it's going to grow. I think it will grow quickly as they share word of mouth, but right now it's not in the kind of use I want to see.
And I think maybe just to answer that and to give some more perspective, UEN has been a great partner in rolling this out to the state. They have created, their professional learning team has, they love this tool, and they've created some courses for teachers to be able to learn how to use it. There's, it's being presented at conferences. It's being presented, with multiple user groups. I think that, when people see what this tool can do, they go, well, yes, we need to have this. Our students need to have this. And so the growth will continue, because I think as we build this groundswell up,
it takes away the big waste of time of how to store your files or trying to put everything in a Google folder or something like that. And even how to format your research paper. All the formatting's in there for you. So you're not spending a lot of time on mundane tasks that really take away from getting the work done.
Yeah, it integrates with Canvas, it integrates with Google Suite, it integrates with the Microsoft Suite as well.
Thank you.
Brittany, sorry.
All those many thank yous is fantastic to hear. Just a quick question. So I've used the software. It's a great software. I guess my question though is like the role of UETN and the role of LEAs in establishing, use and pushing use of software. Like, has there been any information about like what would a statewide contract cost? I mean, we have what the statewide contract costs, but what would it cost for LEAs to manage their own usage, and what would be the savings across the state? So do we save money with a statewide contract, not just like in the per student average license, but based on the current usage, what would it cost for LEAs to purchase this product as opposed to the state investing in a statewide contract that may not be fully utilized across the state?
I think that's a great question, Brittany. And I actually was talking with the CEO yesterday, and I said I really need to have that cost comparison. But he did confirm that it would be significant savings to do a statewide contract, because what you would be, a small LEA would be paying, out so much per user. When you bring all of that across, it becomes quite a number. So the economy of scale of being able to do the statewide contract would be saving, I would say, several $1 million.
So that becomes the question, Rick. We wouldn't entertain buying this ourselves because we couldn't ever afford it as an individual LEA. But I feel bad that we don't get the general use out of it yet that we feel should be happening. So I wish there was a way to keep software developers on the hook so they kept providing services to train and get people interested instead of just making the sale and moving on.
Yeah. I mean, the current pricing, the current contract is about $2 a student. Obviously, there's been changes that, if we have to do a new contract, it'll probably be a little bit more than that, but it's still that as software goes, and when you get the kind of economies of scale that we're getting, that's pretty expensive.
Yes, thank you. We have Jason and then Brittany.
So my question is this a sole source, or would we have to do an RFP to determine if there's other sources of companies that offer a similar product?
And I don't know if Laura Hunter is on, but she did send me a note this morning. She sent a note out to several.
Hi, Everett. I can answer that.
Yes, please.
Sure. Jason, thanks for the question. So USBE currently holds the contract for this. So the funding request would probably be more of a general tool, just like when we did a request for a learning management system, we didn't really name the software itself. So it would be vendor non-specific. There would need to be a competitive RFP. and I don't know if the existing contract has language that they can reassign it to a different agency, or if it needs to be a whole new contract. So to be determined, but I would think multi-year contract usually has a lower price, and so we would probably want to do a competitive RFP. And this spring, we're doing a competitive RFP for it's a very wide net for what we're calling LMS add-on products. So a number of different tools for higher ed and public ed that learning tools that would integrate with the learning management system. So it's a very general request. While I have the floor, I'll just also mention there are a couple other big K-12 contracts that are coming up for to be expiring. The Canvas learning management system, we're in the last year of our current contract, and so that will be going out for RFP beginning in January. And then Nearpod will be a year following that, and both of those, I think, have significant usage across the state. So it's a topic that I think we obviously need a lot more discussion on, and it's on the agenda for our board retreat, just to get a little bit deeper dive into these different pieces of software, their usage, what our approach should be. Because frankly, I could use some direction from Patty, your board, and also from higher ed on how you want those things prioritized, unless we just have unlimited money, which we don't.
Yes, thank you. I'll respond in the end, and so I'll turn it to Brittany.
I think that what was just said kind of gets to some of my concerns, and maybe if there's some more deliberative process on how software is purchased or pushed at the state level. Is there a way to find those economies of scale based on great usage from LEAs and then rolling it into a state contract, rather than the state picking a piece of software and saying, here's what we want to push out across the state, and seeing, I know that this particular piece, we had some money at the state level. And so in order to support online, that immediate online learning requirement, is this a great opportunity to kind of push that out? It was never meant to be like, here's a solution for learning across the state. It was really specific to that online environment during kind of the COVID pandemic. And so it's really like balancing so that the state doesn't purchase a software license that isn't, as Superintendent Long said, isn't utilized across the state. And so we've got unused licenses. And so is that really getting to a price point where we're actually utilizing it at the cost, and that it makes sense to purchase something across the state? And so I think it's a philosophical question as well, is what types of software do we purchase and push out from the state level, and what do we roll up to the state level because there's so much usage across the state and we are capitalizing on economies of scale.
Thank you. Jason, did I skip over you?
No, we're good. Is my hand still? I think I lowered it.
Okay, thank you. So in speaking to this agenda item, the questions are the same question I think that have come up in the past when we've talked about statewide licenses for software. And Brittany, thanks for bringing that up, that this was originally intended, with those ESSER dollars, to be able to say it's for that digital environment. That is now the environment that we live in. It's not the environment that is just for the pandemic. It's the use of these digital tools as we've always wanted them to be, for the right purpose at the right time, to provide that access and equity. And that's one of the biggest things that as a board that we've been discussing, is the difference between the haves and the have-nots when you come to our larger LEAs and those that are smaller, the ability for them to have that economy of scale when purchasing and those that do not. And so in further widening that gap of those that have the ability to attain or purchase those licenses and those that don't, or have that ability to have teachers who are highly trained in that area and those that don't, then we would be widening the gap by not offering the tool to all of them. So I think that's the reasoning behind it. I do think that knowing that the usage, being able to say, is there a way to scale up and still have that smaller dollar amount? We found with Canvas and other platforms that wasn't true. They would give us the lowest amount, and then we would say, well, then what is our cost savings over time in scaling that up? So when we talk about access and equity, that was the number number one concern. Two is the results from teachers. Although we have the numbers here, we also have those results from students or teachers saying the performance of their students when using the tool, when using them alongside the standards, and then being able to transfer that knowledge from one course into other courses. So it goes across, even though that skill is taught in just one course. Then it's also transferable between K-12 moving forward with higher education and being able to use platforms and tools that really address some of the things that higher education does as well. So those were the points. I know as a chair, I just took liberty to state those things, and I'm not supposed to advocate usually on behalf of. Those were the things. So I think one of the discussions today is the timing of it, which is if we don't put it on now, is there still time to put it on the list without disrupting service for those that are using it in the classroom?
Patty, can I ask a couple clarifying questions on this?
Yes, yes.
Just real quick, and Rick, I just want to get clarification on the numbers on the sheet. Are these licenses available, or is it actual utilization where there's usage?
This is actual utilization.
Okay. And then
And it's been going up every month. Every month we see 4,000 or 5,000 more users.
Great, great. And then you mentioned that the state board approved the original adoption of this with ESSER funds. Has there been any action by the state board for this particular specific request?
I can speak to that. Sorry. I am so sorry. Okay. In speaking to that, this was viewed as a UETN request, as a request that would come here, meaning that it would be a statewide license. And so that was the understanding in how we've worked in the past with things that have been considered in the realm of statewide licenses. And so that's why I think it is a good discussion item moving forward. If we're going to continue that practice, which is the practice of the past, and having some of those statewide licenses that benefit all students, the same, like with Canvas, it benefits all students in higher ed, the same thing. So I guess the discussion is if that's a continuing practice moving forward, which USB and on behalf of K-12, we really hope that that is a continued practice, or if there will be a different practice in mind.
Okay, thanks.
That's the case with USHE too. We really support the contracts that UETN goes out for.
Yeah, and as Laura mentioned, that's why we'd like to have a much broader discussion at the retreat in this area, because it is a newer area than, say, network connectivity and other things. And with all of the federal funding of recent years that has come through, it's sort of exploded a lot of this licensing that UETN has been paying for. But it raises, I think, some really important questions for the board in the long term going forward for UETN's role in software licensing. So,
yes, and as part of that, it's in the way we advocate. So when we advocate on behalf of UETN, then we have the board members that you see sitting around the table also advocating on behalf of UETN, asking for those additional funds to come in. So, and then when we're asking on behalf of, say, USBE or USHE or the smaller, then it's usually that agency that is on behalf of that agency. So that support network is exponentially expanded when it comes from UETN.
All right.
Okay, so
Patty,
with
there was a question from Brittany in the chat regarding the possibility of USBE extending out with additional funding. ESSER, I don't know if that I can't speak to that. So,
yeah. At this point in time, when we did discuss that, our ESSER funds are not available for that. So we are at the end of them and having extended all of them and the deadlines as well. So I'm wondering if we can go back to the beginning, and with this, we've kind of done a discussion through the 4 items that are on the funding request. And as a committee, I'm wondering if we would like to do a vote one item at a time, or if we wanted to do it as a whole. Do we have any motions, or Superintendent Long?
Yeah, just another comment on another item. So the USHE cybersecurity request is also, I believe, a K-12 request. There's great concern of what's happening with attacks on student databases right now. And where it's hit USHE, I think it's starting to come to K-12.
So if I can just chime in on that, and Steve, maybe you could say a word or two. I think this is specific to USHE. On behalf of USHE, is that right, Steve?
That's right. I agree with Superintendent Long. I think the K through 12 needs to take this serious as well, but this is certainly what we're up against in higher ed at this point in time.
But this specific amount though it's intended for use by USHE. If it would expand to K-12, it would be a higher amount. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. What we did is got together after audits and looked at a set of tools. We looked at standards. We know that there's a policy that will be passed here next month. And in order to meet the standard of that policy, this is what we require.
And as I understand it, our intention at the UETN side is this will essentially be a pass through. Operationally, I don't think there's any plans for UETN to take on any operational role in these funds. Is that right, Steve?
That's correct. The operational part of it will be taken care of by the individual institutions.
So David,
Chair Norman.
Yes.
This is Jason Straight. I would make a motion to approve the document with 4 items with the full approval of the board.
I
Thank
second.
you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is Laura, just a clarifying point. So the document, there's 2 different documents. I just wondered if Jason could be a little more specific.
Yeah, in his motion, he said with the 4 items.
So includes the.
So it'd be 2
Includes the additional
documents, yeah. With 4
Um,
items.
All right, so 2 with 4.
And I re-second.
Thank you. We have discussion to the motion. Brittany?
So I think I heard, sorry, it was a little bit garbly, but I think I heard that it includes the software program as the 4th. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay. If I remember that document correctly, there was 2 options, a 3 through 12 and a 6 through 12. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so I would just amend the motion to include it as the 6 through 12 as the ongoing request.
Jason, is that a friendly amendment? I'm not hearing you. I think that you are speaking. If you want to put it in the chat, is that a friendly amendment?
Sorry, I just a minute. Yes, I would accept that.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion to the motion? Okay, let's vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With a raise of hand as well, if that's, thank you. Those opposed say nay. Thank you. It has been approved. Get to the next one. Thanks everyone for that discussion. Stop the sharing. So Spencer, do you want to talk to us about your next steps now that this has been approved?
Yes, so next week on October 4th, we have a meeting scheduled with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget and the Lieutenant Governor to present these priorities. So thank you. So we have the formal adoption by the board that we'll present with those changes. And then from there, of course, we'll start some conversations with our legislative committee members and others. And then, of course, with the Governor's Office, if they have any questions going forward. And then from there, as we'll get into legislative season.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to move to the next agenda item. Spencer, who would you like as staff to address this agenda item?
It looks like Lisa had to jump off. This was just to give a brief update on that. Oh, are you there, Lisa?
I am there. I'm just on the
Oh.
phone and I apologize totally about my computer problems.
Okay, well, yeah, go for it if that's okay, Patty.
Yeah, just regarding the ARPA dollars, I contacted the governor's office a couple days ago, and the ARPA application, which is approximately 19.3 million, has been submitted to the U.S. Treasury's office. They have not yet, and it's been at the U.S. Treasury's office now for about a month and a half. It has not even been reviewed yet. So we're in a complete hold on that part of it. Regarding, they don't have a feel regarding the timeline. So I'm working with, I've been keeping apprised both the governor's office, of course they know, and then our legislative, my partner who's Yvonne from the legislative office, so that they're aware that we have these funds that in essence was, they thought they came to UETN for last year, and we have not received it, and it's still open for review. So we really don't know which way we're going right now with the ARPA dollars.
Do you have any feeling why that's the case, Lisa?
She just said, they just said that they have too many applications at the U.S. Treasury's office, and they're reviewing every application. And our application actually has been reviewed once by the U.S. Treasury office, and then they submitted it with comments. We made the adjustments, and then we resubmitted it to the governor's office, who submits it to the U.S. Treasury's office. They chose to hold it for a period of time because they decided to have there's another ARPA project that they chose to push first, and that's with the mental health facility with the Huntsman. And so that's moved forward. It has not been approved either, but they held everyone's application for almost a month. So, and now the U.S. Treasury's office has everybody's application.
Yeah.
It's just timing.
And just for a little bit of added background too, I don't think any of the ARPA funds that have been available to the state through the governor's office has been approved or funded.
That is correct. Correct.
And just to clarify also, that this was the 19.5 million that was essentially adopted and appropriated by the legislature last year. So they appropriated it, assuming the federal dollars would come. For those that are unclear on what we're talking about.
It was appropriated correctly in March 2022. 20, oh my gosh, yeah, 22. And everyone thought, and actually the legislative analysts, everyone thought we received the funds effective July 1st. And we were just given the opportunity to apply for the funds. So that's where we're at this point in time. So we're kind of on hold. And
Lisa, are there any
Are there any risks right now while it's being placed on hold of projects that we wanted to have and are not happening because we were counting on those funds that we need to address through the legislative funding instead?
Well, there are some. The answer is yes, there are risks. They did actually have us adjust our application, and because this is a capital project ARPA request, they asked us to pull out approximately about 4 million in healthcare kits going out to the schools. That was pulled out of the original application, and we submitted and we replaced it with additional equipment and and there were a couple additional RUs in that within the network, within UETN network. So there's been changes, absolutely. And then if we do not get approved for all this equipment, it will create an issue for UETN. We have been slow on moving forward with the project for this fiscal year, but we've gone ahead and started to move forward, assuming that the funds will be there. So it's like if with the legislature, they said they've never, experienced this before, so they're not quite sure how they're going to handle everything. Everyone's just kind of waiting and seeing. We're hoping it will be resolved by the next session, and that's when I'm looking at it. Spencer, I don't know. I don't think we're not going to hear much before January. I don't think.
Yeah, we don't know. We have not gotten any indication. And I don't know if Patty, if there's any talk in the governor's office on timing, or if there's any news you're getting from Treasury on this.
I'm not. Brittany, are you hearing anything?
No. I can ask if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Just in thinking about, moving forward and hoping we get these, we have had federal funds that changed drastically even when we've had, GANs or promises of funds, or even having received funds. And so just want to make sure we're not putting any of, positions, any, big projects at risk, or UETN at risk, being responsible for funds that aren't received.
I'm on a committee that is going to indicate what things is going to be funded. And then it appears to me, at least in the meetings we've had, that the federal government is not only overwhelmed, but so is state government with all of this money and how it's going to be allocated. And so that it's allocated in such a way that the federal government can hold everybody in account. Because I think, some of the CARES Act money has been abused. And I think that shockwave went through federal and state government, and now everybody's very, very cautious and wants to make sure that all the applications are reviewed so that that doesn't happen again.
I do want to do a shout out with K-12 CARES money. We are one of the states that did not get a negative on that. And so through our grants management system and the follow-up with the receipts and how it was identified, we got an all clear for the state of Utah.
Great.
So maybe they can move us to the front of the list, like those that did well, keep doing.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks for that update, Lisa. I really appreciate it. I know it's always a scary thing when it comes to money, but we have the right people in moving forward. Any other discussion on ARPA funds? Thank you. We will move on to the board retreat, and Spencer, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Hopefully you got an email about kind of the general run of the day on the 14th. It will be here. We're going to start here at the Eccles Broadcast Center. Our thinking is, with many new board members, and also since we haven't met in person for quite some time, we thought it would be nice to get a little bit of a review of what UETN's sort of core services and work is. And so we'll have a few presentations as well as a tour of the Network Operations Center in the morning. And then at lunchtime, we'll walk across the street to the guest house here on campus to have lunch, as well as some breakout sessions with our advisory councils. Those 4 topics, I don't have them in front of me, but we'll share them here in just a moment. The idea behind this retreat is both to bring everyone up to speed and get everyone on kind of the same page as a board, but also to start some discussion around some key strategic areas of UETN, sort of trying to cast our gaze forward. Along with that, we feel like it would be a good step if the board feels that way by the end of the day on the 14th, to get some outside help to do some strategic planning and some analysis on our current work and current structure of UETN, but along with that, the board's interaction with UETN. We feel like that would be some helpful work to do, probably, in my mind, as we've talked, something over the next 6 to 9 months. And then from there have a new and revised strategic plan from what we currently have, as well as some potentially new ways in which the board is operating, and who knows, maybe some tweaks within the organization as well. We don't know. We don't want to predetermine all of that, but that's kind of the intent, though, is this meeting would be a way to start that, and through that process to start really galvanizing around some strategic priorities for the board. That, again, it may not be a complete reinvention of the current strategic plan, but maybe a re-emphasis and a deepening of that. So with that, Laura, do you have the breakout topics that we identified?
Yeah, so in the morning, there will be the service highlights for professional development and telehealth, and then the network services NOC tour. And then in the afternoon, there's 4 breakout sessions, and participants will join 2 of the 4 and then do a discussion. So the 4 are what we're calling future technologies that would include LTE, 5G, streaming, and so on. Security and data privacy, enterprise software, and the equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility. And this is a case study about how we've been supporting accessibility with certain software. I see heads nodding. That's a good sign.
So hopefully that's okay. That's the run of the day we've planned so far. And hopefully it's productive and meaningful.
I just want to thank everyone that has put into all the planning on this. I know that there's been tons of hours we've reviewed, and Robert Wagner and I have been a part of that review, and just the amount of detail and planning and thoughtful purpose of what is it that this board needs. And we have new board members. We have board members who have been here and have that historical background and knowledge, then being able to build together in a new way, moving it forward. And everyone's so excited to have Spencer on board to lead us in a new direction and what that looks like. So I wanted to thank everyone that's been a part of that planning as well.
Thank you, Patty.
Any additional comments? All right, that means our next meeting is going to be on October 14th for the retreat, but then we have our next meeting is December 7th from 9 to 11. And everyone can get that on their calendars. I also wanted to say it is 10:53. We still have 7 minutes. This is an efficient group that is able to have hard conversations, yet we are able to get through this material. So if there's any further discussion.
No.
I have a final motion.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, meeting is adjourned, and you now have gotten 6 minutes back of your life. Enjoy those fully. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Good
Thank you,
day.
Patty. Appreciate it.
So how come some people